Hello, future people, and welcome to Great Uncle John's weekly video log. This is week 34, maybe 35. It is September the 3rd, 2018. It has been a hot day. We went for a nice 15K bike ride along some of Ottawa's outstanding bike trails. I'll admit to being a little afraid of driving on the road, so we stick to the paths, which are A-OK by me, as I'm a recreational rider and not a commuter, but Ottawa also offers okay commuter bike lanes, although, again, I'm a little afraid of them. Oh, let's jump right into it here. In politics, there are municipal elections going on October 22nd. Municipal politics always gets the lowest voter turnout, which is unfortunate because local government probably has a bigger impact on how we live and how much we pay in taxes than any other level of government, although voter turnout is usually well below 40%. So this year, Mayor Jim Watson is running again, and his style is quiet, non-flashy government, keep the tax increase to 2.5%, and he's managed to do that. His website says in his first term as mayor, Watson oversaw the beginning of construction of the Confederation Line light rail transit line and the successful completion of the Lansdowne Park redevelopment. Watson brought renewed fiscal discipline to City Hall, bringing in the lowest tax changes several years while investing in renewed infrastructure, new community facilities, and transit improvements in all parts of the city. Mayor Watson's first term saw the opening of the Shaw Centre, the EY Centre, TD Place, the revitalized Lansdowne Park, the Vimy Memorial Bridge, the Richcraft Sensplex East, Minto Recreation Complex, Barhaven, Francois Dupuis Recreation Center, and various other recreational complexes. Well, just one other, actually, the Richcraft Recreation Complex. Recreation. They spelled it wrong in Mayor Jim's website. They should check into that. Richcraft Recreation Complex. My main objection to Mayor Jim was his clumsy and sort of fearful handling of Uber's introduction into the Ottawa market and his backwards attitudes on safe injection sites. He needs to get with the times with that. They also seem to have no strategy for waste pickup and recycling. He's a lifelong politician, and there's nothing wrong with that sort of community service, but I'm not convinced he has a modern and vibrant vision for the city. His accomplishments are impressive, though. His main contender is Clive Doucette. Clive Doucette is a city councillor. He seems cozier with Labour and more progressive and forward-thinking than Jim. He says this election is not about choosing a mayor, it's about choosing what your city should look like. Should we carry on with a developer-first model of growing Ottawa, or should we put our communities first? In a communities-first model, we wouldn't have the Heron Gate evictions, the biggest eviction in Ottawa since LeBreton Flats. We wouldn't dump citywide men's shelters in one community. We wouldn't be losing parkland like Mooney's Bay and the experimental farm to private sector development. We would be respecting community development plans that come from years of consultation instead of explaining to residents why we have to ignore them. We would have a new city hospital where the public wants it, not where it makes the most money for developers. We would be fixing our roads, not building more mega projects like the Alta Vista Expressway. So, yeah, I like how Clyde sounds. I'd like to see a mixture of Clyde and Jim, actually. It's too bad that couldn't happen, because I think Mayor Jim has done a lot for the city, but Clyde is right. More needs to be done to make the city livable and to keep the city livable. So hopefully after the election we'll get the best of both worlds. In my riding, Diane Deans is the longtime councillor. I will say to her benefit that she got a dog poop can for the Conroy Pit when she was petitioned to do so by residents, so props for that. Robert Sueta is a restaurateur who seems to have a lot of support in my neighborhood, a lot of line signs up. I know I've been going to his KS restaurant for years and enjoy the food and service, but I don't really know much about his politics. And a young man named Alec Golijanin came to my door, and he's running for councillor of our ward, and he spent 15 minutes sort of passionately selling himself and discussing the issues with me. He may just have my vote just because of his optimism and enthusiasm and freshness. We'll see. Provincially, Doug Ford set up a snitch line so parents could rat out teachers who are teaching the old sex ed, and he says universities have to be free speech zones, meaning they have to allow, I guess, alt-racist type people to speak and to be able to have their talks. And you know what? I'm actually all for that. Having boisterous demonstrations on campus to enthusiastically oppose fascists will be good for the students and will be good for their activist development. And as for the snitch line, I can see Ford getting bogged down in court cases with this weird nonsense. So I can't see this lasting much longer. Federally, Trump is acting tough with the NAFTA deal and tried to negotiate with Mexico and leave Canada out until the last minute as a pressure tactic. And Trudeau and the very impressive, I think, Chrystia Freeland are having none of it and saying that no deal is better than a bad one. And they were pressuring for a deal this past Friday, but they're still negotiating. So at this point, Canadians, I believe, are supporting that stance and not wanting to be pushed around by the likes of Trump. How did that work out for us, future people? Was that a good strategy? Are we better off because of it? Hopefully so. So for the Trump section of this, I'm going to do my Unhinged review. There's going to be a separate video, a book review of Unhinged by Omarosa. So just to kill two birds with one stone, I guess I'll do it in this portion of Great Uncle John. Excuse me, I'll just have a little tea first. Unhinged by, okay, I'm going to get the name right first. Omarosa. Manigo. Oh, Omarosa. Unhinged by Omarosa Manigo Newman is an insider's account of the rise of Donald Trump to president from his reality show days with The Apprentice through the campaign and into the first year at the White House. What was really noticeable for me as I prepared to read this book was how Omarosa was savaged by the press on both the left and the right. She was called a liar, self-serving, disingenuous. She was made fun of, dissed and dismissed by everyone from the president through his advisors, through friendly media commentators, and more liberal sources like Late Night Comics and MSNBC. A lot of people went out of their way to marginalize Omarosa and her story. This may be the fate that awaits all the Trump collaborators, but I thought this book would be an interesting insider's view. So I picked it up, and I was correct. It is an easy read. Omarosa is a good, straightforward writer without a lot of needless digressions. She gets to the point and tells the stories we want to hear about Trump and his inner circle. It is hard not to be impressed by Omarosa's story. She was born poor and her father was murdered when she was young. She was raised by a single mom who seemed to work around the clock. Yet her intelligence and ambition and striking looks helped move her into circles that most people only fantasize about. She seems self-aware, aware of the compromises she's made, aware of the attitude people have towards her, aware of her responsibilities to her loved ones and community and country. She is annoyingly in love with herself and humble brags a lot throughout the book, but on the other hand, she's achieved education, celebrity on television, become an ordained minister, and worked in 2 different presidential administrations. As she points out, being a ruthless self-promoter is admired in men, but something that is described as conniving and self-serving if you're a woman. And being a black woman certainly doesn't help. Omarosa tells the story of her rough childhood, which was full of life lessons for her education and getting the gig on The Apprentice. She has a unique insight into Trump. She has known him since the early 2000s and saw him as a mentor and a ticket to the glamorous world we would all probably want to be a part of, given a chance. She describes a transactional relationship with Trump, which seems to be the only kind possible. He provided her with fame and fortune through reality TV, and she stayed a loyal friend. A lot of the book is rationalizations and explanations of how and why she could stay in the Trump orbit so long. And her character arc goes from a Trump cultist, and cult is how she describes the people and atmosphere around the Trump family, to becoming woke as the reality of what Trump was finally started to dawn on her. Many of us had already concluded that Trump was a deeply flawed racist, but Omarosa had a self-admitted blind side. Trump always treated her well, and she benefited from the relationship, but as the outrages of his campaign and first year as president began to mount, she had to work harder and harder to justify staying with him to herself and her family and friends, and now to us, the reader. Her main thesis is that she was one of the few black people in the inner circle of the White House, and she felt she could do more for her community than she could on the outside. You were either at the table or you were on the menu, is one of her sayings. Her book is a balance of her describing her accomplishments, gossip about Trump, and the people we see on TV, like Kellyanne Conway, and a peek behind the curtain letting us glimpse how the president and his advisors react to the never-ending barrage of goofiness that is the Trumpster fire. I must say it was a page-turner, both for the tidbits of gossip and to see Omarosa increasingly tie herself in pretzels trying to justify herself before finally getting fired by the despicable John Kelly. By the end, I felt that if I had been in Omarosa's shoes, which probably would fit me, she's a big woman, I may have made many of the same choices. I am willing to accept her motivations for sticking around the Trump White House for a year. Sure, she's cashing in now, but I probably would do that as well. As all of them will, and the books will come out over the next few years, it'll be interesting to see if each insider is given the same rough ride in the media. I think the book I'm most looking forward to is probably Kellyanne Conway's, who's painted as a chameleon who will say or do anything to ingratiate herself with Trump or whichever candidate she happens to be working for. I don't think I learned anything new about Trump. He is the dirtbag we all can see. Everything he does is out in the open on Twitter. He has snakes advising him, and he's increasingly losing his mind, but that's all obvious. I did learn more about Omarosa, and I think I have more respect for her than I had going in. By the end, though, it made me wonder why, even if she didn't support Trump's racial politics, she was attracted enough to his tax cuts for the rich, big deficits, anti-labor, and deregulation policies. Those aren't stances that will help out her community or any community other than Trump's golf buddies, so we end up circling back to the self-serving Omarosa. Perhaps one day Omarosa will have a political awakening, perhaps Omarosa's next big awakening will be political. Anyway, good book, quick read, an interesting insight into the characters who surround Trump. Good vacation book. Okay, that's it, future people. I am out of here. I hope to make another Great Uncle John next week, and I hope you watch. Take care.